What are you primarily providing to those customers?
So we have excavators, skid steers, and rubber tire loaders. And the skid steers, they're very popular in agriculture and industrial.
Okay.
And as well as our excavators, they're very. Kubota has done a very good job in building their excavators and their product line. They're well known for their reliability.
Good morning and welcome to the Crownsman Show. During this very difficult time of COVID-19, we continue to keep people connected, informed, and encouraged. This is episode 42, and today we will have Chris Brighton as our guest. He is co-owner and operations manager at Avenue Machinery Corporation. Avenue Machinery is perhaps best known as a Kubota tractor dealer. And today we will have Jared and Chris dig into how long it takes to move the right people into a company and move out people who aren't. They will also be discussing how the technology and new equipment can be frustrating for the older generation farmers and the lessons Chris learned about leadership before becoming an owner of Avenue Machinery. The show is sponsored today by Whipware. Whipware's photo analysis software systems help industries from mining, quarries, aggregate forestry, agriculture, coal, and explosive remove the need to use manual sieving techniques. Their technologies have saved clients millions in energy costs, maintenance costs, process optimization, quality control, lost time injuries, equipment downtime, quantitative decisions, and you can find out more at whipware.com. We're also sponsored by PowerZone. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems no matter the challenge and no matter the location. Get in the zone with PowerZone and visit them at powerzone.com. We're also sponsored by Lamson International. Lamson International is a third-generation family-owned and operated heavy lift and heavy haul construction company with branch offices located throughout North America, Canada, and Australia. Lamson International offers conventional crane rental, heavy transportation, project engineering, and customized rigging, steel and timber mat rental, as well as marine and manufacturing services. They were founded in 1946 by Neil and Billy Jane Lamson. The company is in their 73rd year of doing business. And you can find out more at lamsoncrane.com or email them info@lamsoncrane.com. And today we have our very first featured sponsor, Ashdown Capital. And joining us is Brad Kindle. He is co-owner of Ashdown Capital. Hi, Brad. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. So this is a little different from what our usual show looks like. How is this working for you?
Well, I'm always happy to be the guinea pig, so excited to be on.
I'm glad. So first off, I'd like to know kind of in this situation we're kind of going through, what is that like for you? How are you coping with COVID-19?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting for sure. Personally, myself and the family are managing staying at home. We're lucky enough business-wise that we have the ability to work remotely. So myself and our full team, we've been set up for a few weeks now, working remotely. So it's managing. It's definitely been a different environment. We're obviously in the lending space, working with the banks very closely on behalf of businesses. So it's definitely a different landscape than anything we've been in before. Even different than 0809, but we're coping, and the banks seem to be working with us, so it's working out.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. Is there anything that you'd take from this, from adjusting to the situation that you'd take and use later on, like throughout the rest of your career?
Well, I would say, making use of these online meetings is useful. I mean, saving travel time and all sorts of other things. Definitely freeing up some time. So that's been the biggest learning. I say that, but I miss the face to face already. But
Yeah.
but definitely, we'll make use of some of the online tools for sure.
That's great. Now, please tell us about a survey, something you'd like to highlight from Ashdown Capital.
Yeah, I think right now it'd be a good opportunity to just to highlight some of the government programs, namely some of the BDC financing. Perhaps they've announced that they're lending up to $2 million to businesses with some really favorable terms. Today's the interest rate on those loans is 3.3%. They are absolutely inundated with requests. We've been submitting applications on behalf of clients recently, and one of the things I would say, I mean, whether you're going to get us to help you with that or you're doing it on your own, make sure that you're including all the details and submitting a full application that makes it easy for them to underwrite or to make an understanding of, so that they can submit it and get it approved quickly. I heard rumblings that they have some 8,000 applications clogged up in their system right now. So it's important that if you're going to put an application in, you're putting it in a way that they can manage quickly and efficiently, so that your application can get approved quick, but so that everybody else's can kind of work through the mill as well.
Fantastic. And they can definitely look for you to help them with that, correct?
Yeah, certainly. We're helping all sorts of businesses with all different types of loans, whether it's the BDC stuff or restructuring their existing loans or getting bulges, increases on lines of credit, buying new equipment, that kind of thing.
That's fantastic. Perfect. Well, if you would like more information or are looking for some help, definitely visit ashdowncapital.ca, or sorry, it's ashdowncapital.com. Yeah, no, I was right.
.ca, yeah.
Yeah. Or you can contact them via email, info@ashdowncapital.ca for more information. Thank you so much, Brad. I will also just do a little closing here. Thank you for supporting the show. Please make sure to subscribe. At the end of each episode, I will also let you know how else you can support the Crownsman Show. And now to get started with episode 42, Jared and Chris.
We have Chris Brighton on with us from his location you're out in Abbotsford, is that right, Chris?
Correct, yeah.
And Chris is the co-owner of Avenue Machinery. They've got several locations across BC. They're a Kubota dealer, and Macy Ferguson, Fent. What are the wow, first remote episode. I'm going to struggle a bit. What are the product lines you carry, Chris?
Well, we're both a farm equipment dealer, which is traditionally what we were, but we're also a Kubota industrial dealer. So we carry
like
Kubota. Pardon me?
So that would be like construction and things like that?
Yeah. So it's construction equipment and farm equipment housed in the same dealership.
So how did you get started? Were you one of the founders of Avenue Machinery, or did you buy in? How did that all start for you?
Well, it started for me in 2010, but Avenue Machinery goes back to 1947.
Oh, wow.
It was a Massey Ferguson dealer back then. And so it's been in business since 1947 to today. And it's had some changes over the years, obviously over 74 years or so. Ownership changes and equipment changes, but essentially it's the same company today as it was in 1947.
So how did you get involved in it?
My history is going back to being a heavy-duty mechanic from the late 70s. I'm kind of aging myself, but back then I worked for a John Deere dealership here in Abbotsford, and spent 10 years learning the agriculture equipment industry. And then I switched in 1990. I switched into the industrial division of John Deere, and worked in that sector for 20 years. And in 2010, I kind of didn't retire, but I made a change from the industrial division to come to Avenue, and the intention was to kind of help a struggling business at the time, and purchase it with a couple of partners, and see if we can't make a good go of it.
So when you came on board, now you said it started off as a Massey Ferguson. Was that, did Kubota and did that come off Fent? Did that come on after you joined?
No. So back in through the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, it was primarily a Massey Ferguson dealer. And then even into the 1970s, I guess. And then in the late 80s, or in the 70s, sorry, they brought in Kubota from Japan. And back in those days, Asian machinery was not really well thought of by the North American market, whether it's cars or industrial or agriculture. But the products got stronger and stronger and better quality, and Kubota became the primary product that we sell based on its growth and its quality kind of in the market. And Kubota is a product line that runs the gamut, essentially, from lawn and garden equipment right through to about 250 horsepower tractors. So that suits our market here in British Columbia quite nicely. And on the side of that is the industrial equipment, which is broadening every few years. They keep adding product to that lineup. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to get into some of the service and offerings and get a better understanding, because I know that you see when you go to look at Kubota products, they do have that full line. So in your customer base, I mean, your location you're in is Abbotsford, but and we'll get into some of the other locations you have as well. But what is your customer base? Does it change from location to location? Like in Abbotsford, what would be, I don't know about exact percentages, but what percent roughly would be of, big agriculture, construction, someone just looking to mow their lawn? Is it pretty evened out, or does Avenue heavily tilt towards the commercial users?
That's a good question, actually. It's a bit of a long discussion if I were to explain it thoroughly. But with the three locations that we operate in, so we're in the Fraser Valley here. The market is traditionally dairy farming is been a mainstay, and that's how the company started, serving dairy farmers. And of course, anybody that drives through the Fraser Valley, being a highly productive area agriculturally, raspberry farming, blueberries, fruits and vegetables. If you look to the west in the Surrey Delta area, there's a lot of vegetable farms out there. We have in the far west, just south of Vancouver, there's quite a few potato farmer operations.
Yeah.
So they use the big tractors, the 200 horsepower plus tractors, and then you get into the Delta area, or sorry, the South Surrey area. You'll have your vegetable farms. They in their operations use kind of 40 horsepower to 120 horsepower tractors. And then when you come into the valley more, you get into your heavy dairy farming customers. And they use anywhere from a 40 horsepower tractor right through to a 320 horsepower tractor. So the offering is quite broad in the Fraser Valley. So you've got dairy, you've got all your poultry farmers that use some of our equipment. You have the fruits and the vegetables. And then if you take that and move that into, we go up to the Okanagan, where we operate in North Vernon and in the West Kelowna area. We have two operations there. They're primarily Kubota. And up there, of course, you've got your orchards, apples and cherries, and you've got the vineyards that we service up there. Plus,
Right.
a number of dairy farms that have relocated from the Fraser Valley due to the cost of the land here and the cost of operation. So they've sold out down here, and they've moved those dairy farms up into the Okanagan.
Hence Vernon and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be like Armstrong and Enderby,
right.
kind of through the mountains there. And quite a few dairy farmers are opening up again up in those areas. So we really do serve a broad spectrum of agriculture. So when people ask me, what's our primary, customer that we serve, it's virtually all agriculture, including nurseries. They're actually a big user of small tractors to move
Right.
in and out of the greenhouses, stuff like that. And that's not even addressing our industrial customers.
Yeah, so to stick with the agriculture, but I do want to touch on the industrial in a moment. Because you sell 3 different tractor lines essentially, do each tractor sort of have their own specialty where you go, this is what's, Massey Ferguson or Kubota, these are really good. Kubota's really good for greenhouses, or Massey Ferguson's really good for the heavy plowing, or things like that. Do they separate out?
Yeah, they do actually. So on the Kubota line, you've got basically when you talk agriculture, you're coming in at around a 30 horsepower tractor through to a 200 horsepower tractor, and the Kubota line hasn't traditionally had high horsepower tractors. That's only been in the last few years.
Mm.
So to fill that gap, traditionally, Kubota was the primary product that we sold as far as the market. We had good market penetration with that brand. When we talk about the Fendt tractor, the Fendt tractors are built in Germany, and they're super high tech. It's like owning a Mercedes-Benz car, essentially. They're very flashy tractors. They're super quiet. They are big horsepower tractors. They're expensive, but they satisfy the market from between 150 horsepower to about 320 horsepower. So the people that are buying that type of tractor are doing some pretty heavy field work.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd be plowing and disking and land preparation, or doing custom hauling. So manure hauling is something that gets is kind of what custom operators would do, and they tend to lean on very big, heavy horsepower tractors.
Right.
And they have a very physical, heavy weight to them. So when you're hauling tens of thousands of pounds of manure in these tanks, and it moves around in the tanks a little bit, pushes a tractor around. So you have a very big tractor with good braking capabilities. So they have a lot of features. So that's why we have the Fendt brand, because Kubota doesn't make a tractor that big.
I see.
And there are European customers that really lean on that European tractor.
Right. So when you get into now on the industrial side, what gap do you fill there? And is that across all your locations? So I just want to review. You've got a location in Abbotsford, Vernon, Kelowna, and Rock Creek. Do you still have all 4?
Yeah, Rock Creek is a kind of a small little sub dealer that we have there
Oh, okay.
to service customers that are quite a ways away from our dealership locations.
Okay.
So these are ranchers that are up in that area, and they need
I
to
see.
have. They're doing hay farming and beef farming up there, and they need certain types of equipment up there. So we, when we sell into that area to help them stay serviced, we have a mechanic fellow that lives up in that area that looks after those customers remotely, essentially.
I see. So now, so on the industrial side, let's say in Abbotsford, then what are you primarily providing to those customers?
So we have excavators, skid steers, and rubber tire loaders. And the skid steers, they're very popular in agriculture and industrial.
Okay.
And so, and as well as our excavators, they're very. Kubota has done a very good job in building their excavators and their product line. They're well known for their reliability.
Yes.
So we've had very good penetration in the market with our industrial line based on kind of the reliability, the fuel efficiency, the manufacturer support is fantastic with Kubota. So we really service the light construction market because, again, Kubota does not produce they're not in the big excavator market. So our biggest excavator at this point is an 8 metric ton machine. And there's a lot of machinery that's sold in our trade area that is larger than that. And so we don't play in that market at all. So we have very good penetration with landscapers, rental companies,
right,
construction companies that require 2 or 3 small machines for cleanup purposes, pipe digging, around residential areas.
Yeah.
Need a small machine. We have fantastic penetration in that market.
The other part of this that I wanted to touch on is you've got on your website, it's very clear you're new and used. And I'm very interested, and I actually want to spend some time on it because, the old car business model where they sell new and used and, finance the new ones and then or lease it, and after a couple of years you trade in. And is it very similar when you're dealing with the agriculture sector and farmers having to keep their equipment up to date? Is it a very similar model? And to add to that, is that equipment, does the used equipment go out to a separate set of customers, or how does that cycle work? I'm assuming there must be some cycle because the land is continually being utilized.
Yeah. That's a good question. The used equipment can be very challenging because a lot of the equipment that comes in, it's been out there for a number of years. Some of it's in rough shape, but the people that are looking at used farm equipment are sometimes the hobby farmer, or could be even a well-run big professional farm. They're looking for a tractor just the odd job around the farm, and they don't want to spend a lot of money or put a new tractor in that job, essentially. So it's not quite like the car market, although we're set up essentially the same as an automobile dealership. We have parts, sales, and service. The business model is the same. The challenge of getting rid of used equipment is different in that there is no auctioning price. Essentially, you take your car into, if it's more than 5 years old, you take it to a dealership to trade your car in, and they typically will give you a set amount of money. They'll just type it into an auction place, and it'll say that car's worth $5,000, and they won't give you any more no matter what, because they don't even put that car on their lot. They just flow it through. We have no way to do that with the with used farm or industrial equipment. So we have to actively look for homes for those used pieces that come in, and it's quite a bit of used equipment business.
So when most customers, being primarily companies, are they going to are they typically buying these, or is it leased now? I mean, is that how most people are buying new equipment, especially for large production?
Depends on the customer. The leasing model is a few years back started to get popular. What happens is the customers in the end are just renting the tractor essentially, or renting the industrial equipment, if you want to look at it that way. And so they're not really building equity in the machinery. So it makes it difficult when the customers rotate machinery through on lease programs, because you have to find a home for those machines that come back to you from the lease. And a lot of farms want to know what their payments are, or a lot of industrial customers, they just want to know a monthly payment, and then they can kind of figure out their expenses from that. But in the end, we have to find a home for lease returns, and it kind of floods the market with used equipment, and so that kind of impacts your new equipment sales.
Right. And that sort of leads into this next part that I'm always fascinated by how markets change. Like you said, now lease has become more popular. People are budgeting out their projects, so they just want a monthly payment. They put it into their finance model. How much? I mean, I didn't realize you had been in the industry for so long with John Deere. You said 20 years in industrial and 10 years in the ag. Is that right?
Yeah, 30 years with John Deere.
30 years with John Deere. So how much has it changed? I mean, obviously there's so many things, but I mean, obviously the equipment itself has changed, but just even at the grassroots level, how much has the agriculture industry changed, and the dairy industry, just the way that things operate, your relationship with them? What have you seen over, over 30, well now I guess pushing up to 40 years now, 40 years.
Yeah. I've been around for a while. It has changed dramatically. So when you go back to when I was an apprentice, everything was very mechanical. And all through my years of learning the trade of repairing the equipment, you could visually see problems that were occurring with the equipment. Today, everything is, I would say, a little more difficult for our mechanics. They have to be very good with laptops. They have to be able to decipher, plug the computers in essentially, and understand what the programs and the fault codes and all the problems that come up on the screen, and chase that problem through. And it could be anywhere from a physical problem, say if you have a transmission issue where it doesn't drive, you could have a physical problem inside the transmission. You could have a sensor problem. You could have a problem in the wiring harness, and you could have a problem with the control that activates the transmission. So
go ahead.
It gets complicated. So I would say that the mechanics today require more electrical training. They require a lot more diagnostic training to be able to come to a solution quickly on a repair. Where in my day, we could come to a faster resolution. And just as an example, years gone by, there was $2 of parts to every dollar of labor charged to a repair. Today, it's almost like it's $2 of labor to every dollar of parts. So you could be spending hours diagnosing a problem, and eventually you come to the solution and you find out that it's a sensor problem. And you buy the sensor, and the sensor's, say, $50, and the labor was $400. So
Right.
The market has changed essentially that way, and customers struggle with that. That makes sense to you?
Yeah, it does. And I'm curious too, though. I remember years ago, I was actually talking to my father, and I was, you always hear about the good old, essentially the good old days where the, vehicles were tougher and all that stuff. And he laughed. He said, no. He said a truck used to go maybe 100,000 clicks. Now people are getting 500,000 off them. You can't even compare the quality of today that they were yesterday. Is that true? Is it sort of a nostalgia that nowadays, how much, like, do tractors run longer? Do they, obviously they have more features, of course, but the parts quality is part of the reason, or any of the reason that has switched from a higher labor cost to a parts cost, is because the parts are better as well?
Yeah, what you're saying is, and what your father is telling you is true. That is the case. Whether it's a car or a truck or agriculture or industrial equipment, these pieces of machinery are far better than they were 30 years ago. Absolutely. The farm tractors, they run longer with less problems. You don't have to service them as often. So the service intervals are extended based on better quality oil, better quality manufacturing, better filtration. There's a lot of changes in the last number of years that have created that scenario. But it has created a problem where your average person cannot repair their own tractor, and that's a problem with people my age, essentially, that maybe are still operating these businesses, whether it's industrial or agriculture. A guy my age on a dairy farm still think I can do that stuff when really I can't. I won't have the tooling and may be able to change the oil, but that's it. And the servicing of the machinery has extended the hours out, so that the cost of operation is actually less on new machinery than it was years ago.
Yeah. But I do understand it's probably hard to let go that you used to, after a day, you'd go and work on the tractor and throw on the lights, and there's scenes from movies in it. I mean, it's romanticized as well in a way, right? So I can see how that's hard to all of a sudden you're basically just driving a computer.
Well, we call it like on the Fendt tractors. Essentially, they're drive by wire. Essentially, how they say on an airplane, fly by wire. Well, it's drive by wire. It's all electronic. There is no linkage anywhere in that tractor. It is completely electronics over hydraulics.
Wow.
Yeah. They're sophisticated.
So I want to talk a little bit. I mean, you've been in the industry for you talk about 40 years. You deal with a lot of people, and I'm curious. Do you still have some of the same people that you dealt with 30 years ago, or are there people that sort of stand out that you see their truck pounding into the driveway, and it's you develop these relationships when you're in an industry, one industry that long.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Regardless of how business operates, we're still humans, and we want to have trust with our people that we do business with, and it's still a people business, even though we have all these ways of doing business through computers and emails and all that. People still like to talk to people, and they get a sense of who you are, the trust factor, and you can do a lot of business still with a handshake, although we have a lot of electronics tools to work with. Face-to-face and a handshake goes a long way. To answer your question, are there a lot of people that we still deal with? Absolutely. I still see farmers that it's almost like we're dealing with the grandpa, the son, and the grandson now that are coming in to pick up parts. And when they come in, we have the coffee pot in the showroom, and the customers will stand around and we'll share what's going on in the industry, or we'll just share what's going on, especially what's going on right now. And people are staying away actually right now for the most part. Business has softened, but we are still taking a lot of phone calls, and we still need to support the customers out there. The animals still need to be fed. The milk still needs to be processed, and otherwise we're all going to be hungry this winter. So we are considered essential business, and the farmers that are coming by and picking up parts are actually thanking us for staying open during this time. So again, that relationship that we have with the customers is important. It's even important on the industrial sector. It's just a little bit less personal.
Because I guess with the industrial, projects are changing, right? There's a lot more shift. Whereas in agriculture, it's sort of more of a rinse and repeat process, right?
Yeah, it's family oriented still. Even with some of the bigger industrial farms, the relationship is still family. So some of the highly successful farmers that have got the wherewithal to purchase another farm and then set their son up on another farm, or their brother, and so it extends out. So that relationship is still there with the family, and so they're not corporatized yet anyway. But on the industrial sector or in the construction industry, we may be dealing with an equipment foreman for 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with a different guy because that foreman has moved on for whatever reason. So that relationship is not as long. Not in every case, but in some cases.
It's funny, and this one thing that always happens in these interviews is that there's always this little nugget somewhere like, oh, I never thought of that, and I just, when I didn't anticipate that being part of sort of just the difference between the industrial and agriculture. I assumed there was a lot of similarities, but now that I think about it, of course, and I've been in the construction industry, so I know exactly what you mean. The same when I drive up, where I grew up. Pretty much it's the same people in the same areas, but you go to any given construction site, it's a completely new crew. I mean, sometimes it's every few months. So it's an interesting difference between the two industries. And going for as long as you've been in the industry, you're a co-owner of Avenue Machinery. How do you grow? Have you grown the business since you've been involved, or was it more about taking getting it to where it needs to be and then maintaining it. How have you sort of approached that as a business owner?
Well, when we bought the company, going back now in 2012, just a sec, I got a problem with my computer here. Quit.
Oh, hopefully don't
Sorry.
lose you.
Yeah, my computer, I got a notification on there. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. When we bought the company, going back a number of years now, it was in a struggling position at the time. The 2008 downturn in the economy really affected the company at the time before I was here.
Yeah.
And they struggled to get back to where they were. And so the company, I got asked to come on board and try and get the product support side of the business stronger. It was struggling especially on that side of the business in all 3 locations. And so what I did was I had to come in and assess the product support side. So assess the mechanics, assess the parts people, assess the processes. And we found some real weaknesses in the business at the time where we needed to modernize, and we needed to make changes. I'll put it nicely. Make changes to get the right people in the right spots. And it took a little time. Of course, you don't want to come in like a bull in a china shop. And but we have grown from, I believe we had about, I'd say, 35 people in 3 locations, possibly. I think I can't quite remember that, but we at our highest point we were up to about 75 people.
Wow.
And our mechanic shops went from having 6 mechanics here in Abbotsford to a high of about 20. And so it requires, at the time, it required a modernization of a lot of the equipment that hadn't happened, I guess, under previous.
Your mechanical equipment, you mean?
Yeah.
Service equipment. Right.
Yeah, computers, especially training, and getting some of the people. It's not just me. There's a lot of good people that I brought in that helped me achieve the success that how we've grown. So we're not quite tripled our business since we bought it, but we're close to that.
And consistent, was it now you said at the beginning, you don't want to come in like a bull in a china shop, but sometimes you kind of got to be a bull and make tough decisions. So that period, how long did that period take to sort of get the right people in place? And the reason I'm asking too is because we look at our demographics, and a lot of people that are starting out or trying to figure out their next steps in their business, or maybe opening a business, they've got to make the decisions that you've probably already had to make over the years. So how long did that transition take? And because, I think especially when you're starting out, it can be tempting to just kind of reinvent the wheel. And I'm curious, how long was your approach to get the right people in place and frankly move the wrong people out?
Yeah, well, that's one way to put it, but I would say we really started to get traction after about 4 years.
Yeah,
it's a slow process. You make good hires along the way, but you can make some mistakes and get the wrong person because you're trying to make change, and you when you hire, sometimes you're looking for certain qualities to solve certain problems, and you make the wrong hire, and that change doesn't happen. and so you need to readjust again. And sometimes that can upset the whole crew. You've made the wrong choice.
Yeah.
And I have. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, we have a fantastic crew today. Very happy with the staff that we have in all of our locations, and that's an ongoing challenge because people have lives and they make change while you're running your business, and you may really get a good hire, and he's making good inroads, and something changes in his life, and he moves on.
Yeah.
Now you're back to square one again, looking for an individual with similar qualities, and they're few and far between. So, especially in leadership roles, that's a tough part. That's a tough part. So the people that are working with me, not under me, essentially working with me, and those key managers, they have to be as engaged in the business as I am, and have those qualities, those personal qualities.
It genuinely never ceases to amaze me how much a set of tasks can be exactly the same. The requirements can be exactly the same, but the difference it takes, or one person's approach to another person's approach, or their personality differences, it never ever ceases to amaze me how much of a different result you can get. And sometimes it's not even that maybe the person is just the wrong fit for that particular role. But you can just get such a different outcome. I'm sure you've seen that many, many times.
Oh, for sure. And they have to sometimes fall into a role where they've got certain qualities that you're looking for, but they're missing some of the maybe qualifications or the qualities in another area.
Yeah.
So then you need to shore that up, or you need to you say, can I train them in that, or is this something that they just naturally don't have or do have? The HR side of it, essentially, when you have a team of managers, you can really ruin the morale of your team if you don't. If you put a guy in a management role and he just doesn't have, say, patience, or he may have the qualifications technically, but he doesn't know how to communicate. So when you're dealing with the public, the customer is not always right, but they're right many times. And you want to satisfy the customer at the same time being fair to your business and fair to your managers, and allow them to do their job and make the decisions that you're asking them to make. You can't handcuff them. So you put some processes in place or rules in place to operate. And, good managers will know their boundaries, and they'll function inside those boundaries. And if they need help, you need to have that, that old term, the open door policy, and let's talk about it, and we do that. But all the owners that are part of the business are working here every day. And so we're engaged in what happens on a day-to-day basis. We're not remote at all.
Yeah, and I think that it makes such a huge difference too when you know that the ownership groups are fully engaged. I think even you see it. I've seen the difference between some even large corporations where their leadership has actually made an effort to stay engaged, and you can actually feel it, even in these large teams, that just the difference, the way that employees will actually take ownership of the company, and it's just a huge difference. And I wanted to ask, before we wrap up the show, again going back to that, and there's a very specific reason that I'm quite interested in the length of time you've been in the industry, and particularly before you transition into ownership, because I'm wondering, I guess what it comes down to is I'm curious. Let's say you had been involved you had been in a part of the ownership group 10 years after you'd been with John Deere instead of the 30 years. How do you think you would have still been able to run the company effectively, or how much value did that add, that full 30 years being in the industry that long before now being in an ownership where the buck actually stops with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I've been asked that before. Actually,
Yeah.
I think I'll kind of go back a few years and tell you just a kind of a situation that happened to me. My first foray into management was just being a foreman in a mechanic shop, and being 30 years old at the time, and trying to direct 15 mechanics at the time that were all older than me. They didn't give me the respect. I found it very difficult. I don't think even at 30, I wasn't mature enough at the time to be in a leadership role, but I did it for a year, and I sure learned a lot. And eventually, I just kind of caved from it, and I just went back to being a mechanic. And I enjoyed being a mechanic at the time. And so my next movement into management in the John Deere world was when I was 40, 10 years later. And it was a completely different story. I had 10 years more of maturity, 10 years more exposure to the customers. And I just found it not difficult anymore to face challenging situations, and whether it was internally with the staff or with the customers. And I just there probably is lots of young guys out there that maybe would have done a better job at 30 than I did at the time. But I can guarantee you, for me personally, when I attempted management at 30 years old, it was not a success. I was organized, but I struggled with the interaction with staff and customers. And at 40, I found it a piece of cake, and I carried on for another 10 years in the management side with this John Deere dealership environment. And I received a lot of training there, and that helped me formulate, kind of learn the nuances of dealing with customers and tough situations, and settling disputes and all that kind of stuff, and working with mechanics and hiring, really good guys, hiring mediocre staff and stuff like that, and how you fit those people in, because not everybody is a crackerjack at their job. So you have your real quality staff that are just seem to come by their trade naturally, and you have other guys, that are decent at their job. They're good at it, but it's not quite the same.
Right.
They're not your go-to guys necessarily, but you need people, and so it's a difficult situation trying to massage a staff when you have different personalities and different abilities. So it's been great. I don't stress out very much at my age now. I've pretty much served my apprenticeship, I think, when it comes to dealing with issues over time. So it's.
But you've got a new one with COVID, hey? That's one we haven't seen before. There's always something new.
Yeah, it's challenging. We're trying our best to keep the staff safe here. We put up we've done everything that the media or the health authorities are asking us to do with the distancing, customers coming in, and trying to keep the customer safe and keep our staff safe at the same time. has been a little challenging because not all the customers are coming in the door and they automatically kind of revert back to a close contact with our parts people, say, and they want to handle parts back and forth. And you're trying to say, I don't need to touch that part. You just can show it to me, and I can find it for you. So it has been challenging the last few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think? Has there anything that you're doing? I mean, we were talking. You were supposed to be in our studio. Now you're remote. We've actually changed essentially we're changing our business model because of this. Obviously, you're still going to be close contact. Is there anything, though, that you see is actually going to last as a change? Is there anything that sort of newly developed you went, oh, we could actually do this way. This is a little more efficient?
Actually, yes. If you take a look at our website, you can almost buy a tractor online. So we have the customers have the ability to have direct chats. You've seen that in lots of websites where somebody comes on and says, "Hi, how are you today? What can I do for you?" Well, we have that, except we have another level of that where the customer can get more engaged with our sales staff, and we follow up on our leads, and our lead generation through our website has increased. We started doing that already about a year and a half ago. I hired a marketing expert, and I have no training in that side of the world kind of thing. So hired the right guy, and we have dramatically changed how we interact with the customers through our website, and making it easy for the customer to get information quickly and responding to their questions in a pretty fast manner. And so that's a change that we made a while ago, but it seems to be actually gaining ground here during this crisis that's going on, because people don't necessarily want to come in here.
Yeah, I think we're going to see people that otherwise would have just kind of ignored certain technologies are now going to take advantage of it. And, and we realized even on our end all of a sudden, well, if a customer flies in, I mean, they're buying plane tickets. We've had people come from all over North America. They're buying plane tickets and booking schedules, and I mean that money could be going into other places. It could be going into actually promoting the episode as opposed to just traveling. And it does. And I think we are going to see shifts in the way that people actually do business and take on technology and integrate it into so it's just a normal part of their life. I really do think it's going to change things for long term.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's opening everybody's eyes in that you don't necessarily need to get in your car and burn gas to to go look at something, essentially, and your time. So there's people have been using the internet over the last number of years, like Amazon. Younger people use it a lot more probably than the older people, but we are leaning in that direction, and we're seeing growth in that direction as well. Interaction through our website, and parts delivery, looking up parts. Customers can look up the part themselves, and then either call us or send us a online request, and we can pick those parts and get it delivered to them, and then never come into the office here at all. And we started that before, and it seems to have picked up speed during this crisis, of course. Yeah, so it is a fundamental change. Younger people probably a little easier understanding it than the older customers, but the older customers are still walking in, actually.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. My mom, she's pretty slick on that iPad of hers now.
Yeah. That's good.
So yeah, well, Chris, thanks. I know you're busy right now because you are open for essential services and servicing your customers right now, and I'm sure there's some staff that aren't there in the office with you and all things like that. So I won't keep you any longer. Thanks for doing the show. You are with this crisis, you're our first guest, so there was a few little glitches and trying to figure things out at the beginning. So I appreciate you sticking with it and finding time to do this with us. We really do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon. Yeah, you too as well, Chris. Stay safe and all the best to you and your team.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching, and please remember to subscribe and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. We're also excited to launch the Crownsman Show donation page. If you are a dedicated fan and watch every episode, or you have a favorite industry that you love to follow and would like to help support, then please head over to crownsman.com/donations. I'll include the link in the description below. We have set up 2 initial donation options, the $5 monthly subscription and the support heavy industry one-time donation. This is all through PayPal. So if you really want to support, please head over. Thank you so much for all your support, and you might even get a little shout out from me on an upcoming show once you become a subscriber or make a donation. Thank you for watching.